Thank you. Thank you all for your patience. My name is Joy Lines. I'm City Council member for the City of Encinitas and Chair of this Regional Habitat Conservation Task Force. And I'd like to say good afternoon to everyone and welcome to the Regional Habitat Conservation Task Force. This is our last meeting of the year and hopefully our last virtual meeting. We'll probably all give a thumbs up to that. The plan moving forward would be to have our next meeting in March, and it would be in person at Sandag. So now let's get started. Before we jump into the meeting, though, I'd like to remind folks that the public folks and members of the public, the process for providing comments, the primary members are asked to turn on your cameras or raise your hand when you have a comment or question, and we will recognize you to speak. Public members, please use the raise hand icon. The raise hand icon can be found in your Zoom toolbar on the top right of your screen. I think some people might have it in a different place on your screen. If you are participating by phone, press *9 to indicate your desire to speak, *6 to unmute. We will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. We've got a packed agenda today, so we'll launch right in. Item number 1, review of the September 13th meeting minutes. So item number 1 is review. We are not voting on it, but what I would do is ask if if you've reviewed the minutes, if the task force has any comments or corrections. And seeing none, Kim, do we have any public comments?
I do not see any hands raised. I do want to make a correction, is that on our attendance list from the last minutes, we did leave out your attendance chair line. So we will add that to the correction. So
well, thank you for catching that. I appreciate it. And do we have any member comments? I think I may have asked that already.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 2. Now let's begin with non-agenda public comments. Kim, are there any non-agenda public comments?
I don't see anyone's hand just raised.
Thank you very much. Now for comments from the task force members, do we have any member comments? I see no hands raised. And at this point, Kim has a few announcements.
Yeah, so I wanted to just remind everyone that we are going to be in person in March. And since we are a task force, we do have flexibility. We don't have to meet at Sandag. So this next year, we may bring our task force out somewhere. So more to come. You will be getting calendar appointment holds starting in January for the 4 quarterly meetings that we plan to have. And next year, we will also make sure to include the agenda or the meeting link on the calendar appointment, as well as in the agenda. One other thing I wanted to announce is, I don't know if anyone has recently tried to go to the Sandag website, but back in early November, Sandag launched their new website. So if you haven't already, go check it out. We are under the Regional Habitat Conservation tab, and we are still a work in progress. So all of our items are under Regional Habitat Conservation, and there's a lot of words on our page and not a lot of pictures, and the links are there, but we're just wanted to let everybody know that we are still working on refining that. So hopefully by early January, everything will be in its place where it's supposed to be. And you can also get the link to the agenda and the calendar invite there. And then just last Friday, Lauren sent out to the task force members a save the date, and it's for a joint working group forum that will be focused on the 2025 regional plan. It's not a task force meeting, but it is a working group meeting where they are inviting task force members to come and give input. And The date is going to be Thursday, February 9th, from 10 to 12. It's in person at the Central Library. So our task force has been invited to give input and or discuss the 2025 regional plan. And then one last quick announcement. The San Dieguito River Park wanted me to announce that they're hiring an interpretive ranger. So if anybody out there is interested, please contact Leanna Boulay at the San Diego River Park. So that is it for my announcements. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kim. We'll move right along to item number 3, which is introduction of new members. I'll tee it up a little bit and then I'll hand it to Anne and then to Michelle. So if you remember back in September, when we finalized the Regional Habitat Conservation Task Force charter, we added 2 new members to the group, the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County and the San Diego Natural History Museum. Both entities have experience with conservation and land management issues within the San Diego region. First, I will have Anne Baldridge of the Regional Conservation District give a brief introduction, and then she will turn it over to Michelle Thompson of the San Diego Natural History Museum. Anne, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting us to join. Happy to be here with you all. Is it okay if I share my screen? We just have a couple of slides.
Yep.
Okay, can you all see that? Great. Okay, well, thanks. My name is Anne Baldridge. I'm the Executive Director of the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County, and I'm here today with Joel Kramer, our agricultural specialist. And we just wanted to give a quick intro to the RCD and I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. So for those who may not be familiar with resource conservation districts, we are a local governmental special district and we're focused on natural resource conservation. We provide resources and programs on farming, pollinator health, education, and wildfire resilience to engage and empower individuals to protect the land, wildlife, and our communities. We're one of 3 RCDs, resource conservation districts, in the county of San Diego. I see one of our counterparts, Darcy Cook from Mission RCD, on the call today. And we're one of 95 RCDs across the state. So the Greater San Diego RCD works on several different conservation related program areas. They're kind of summarized here on this slide, but we'll kind of drill down and talk in a little bit more detail about the programs that seem to relate to the task force work a little bit more. So one of our core areas focuses on pollinator health. We have a few different programs and we work in partnership with lots of different agencies and organizations across the county and then across Southern California more regionally. One of our current main programs is Working Lands for Pollinators. Through this effort, we're trying to get more pollinator habitat on working lands. One of the outcomes of this program has been a restoration guide for working lands in terms of establishing more pollinator habitat. And we've been able to get out to several farms and ranches to do site assessments and make recommendations about how they can implement more pollinator habitat on their lands. And we're hoping to expand this program in the coming years. We've also been involved in creating a seed and plant source of a San Diego sourced native milkweed. The main overarching goal would be ultimately to provide seeds that can be used in restoration, but we also felt having a more regionally appropriate seed source, which was lacking previously, would be beneficial to home gardeners and gardening in community spaces to attract and support monarch butterflies. And also to kind of encourage people away from the tropical milkweed, which has been really predominant, in garden centers and is so commercially available. I mentioned our networks locally and regionally. We're part of the San Diego Pollinator Alliance and also the SoCal Pollinator Network. And we do a lot of education and outreach around pollinator health and what we can all do to support pollinators. Another of our core work areas is wildfire resilience. We're one of the grantees for the Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Program. This is a statewide program through the Department of Conservation. On one side, this program is all about demonstration projects to increase the capacity of our, of partners in our region to work on wildfire prevention and forest health. Some of our programs focus on gold-spotted oak borer mitigation, as well as workforce development to train people up in forest health practices and wildfire prevention. And wildland firefighting. On the other side of this program is creating a regional priority plan. And this is a document that will outline all the projects that people are planning or working on in the county that would make our region more resilient to wildfire. So an ask to you all today is if you are planning or working on anything related to wildfire, any restoration projects that might have a wildfire benefit, we invite you to submit that project into our regional priority plan project submission form. We're really trying to gather as many projects as possible by the end of the week in preparation for a statewide task force meeting that we're hosting in Southern California in early February. And I'll share the link after our presentation. Alongside within our wildfire resilience program, we also have some landscape level projects to increase forest health, such as Saving San Diego's Last Mixed Conifer project, which is up in the Palomar Mountain area, working with a diverse range of landowners, tribal landowners, state, federal, and private landowners to do forest thinning and other practices that contribute to the forest health and reduce our wildfire hazards on Palomar Mountain. And we do a lot of outreach and education. We support the network of around 40 community fire safe councils in the county. We attend a lot of outreach events, and we also put on workshops on wildland urban interface issues and how to be prepared for wildfire. And lastly, on this, we offer free homeowner assistance programs to help people create and maintain defensible space. I'm going to hand it over to Joel to tell you more about our habitat restoration work.
Hi there, my name is Joel Kramer. I'm the agricultural specialist at the Resource Conservation District of Greater San Diego County. And this first project that I want to share is something that we do in collaboration with many others, some of whom are on the call, like the San Diego River Conservancy. But this is a project that was funded by Proposition 84 funds through IRWM. So we received a grant from the Water Authority. And so we are managing invasive plant removal and a variety of other restoration activities in the El Capitan sub-watershed of the San Diego River. So our partners, the partners on the ground implementing the project include Backcountry Land Trust, the City of San Diego River Park Foundation, and U.S. Forest Service. And they're doing a variety of activities, including mapping the extent of invasives in the area, also actively treating and controlling the spread of Arundo tamarisk and other species, primarily in riparian zones, as well as controlling animal populations like feral pigs and bullfrogs. And in some cases, we're doing revegetation in those areas of the riparian habitat, as well as the River Park Foundation sends out groups of volunteers on the ground in hard to reach portions of the watershed to see what rare species are present and what invasive plant populations may still be spreading further upstream. And the Forest Service is also rehabilitating trails that are suffering from erosion and overuse, and complementing that work with education about the value of natural lands and the reason why those trails need to be safeguarded. And even more so, a focus of our work is our carbon farming program. We're very proud of our work here that we've done in collaboration with other groups in the region, and mentioned the Mission Resource Conservation District, who we're proud to work with. And carbon farming is a set of practices that, while sequestering carbon in the soil, also improve and regenerate the quality of the land, which has benefits for the production and yields, as well as the habitat in those areas. So one practice that we really advocate for that is beneficial to habitat specifically would be the planting of native pollinator hedgerows, which can actually serve as a corridor between public protected lands and private lands in agriculture for wildlife migration, while boosting pollinator pollination for those agricultural plants. And to support activities like that, we do carbon farm planning, which involves planning out all the variety of conservation practices that could improve the quality of that land and quantifying the carbon that could be sequestered in doing so. We provide technical assistance about implementing those practices, like cover cropping and compost application. And then we also host several demonstration sites. I see a rancher that we are proud to work with, John Ostell, is on the call, where there's a demonstration site for prescribed grazing activities to regenerate rangelands. And then lastly, we provide monitoring and analysis to see if those activities are being effective in terms of the vegetation that's coming back, the quality of the soil, the carbon in it, the water that may be saved or infiltrated. And lastly, in partnership with others on the call and in the region, through all this work that we do directly with agricultural producers, we're advocating through a program from the Department of Conservation for additional policies to support agriculture and conservation in agriculture in the region. So very exciting to be here today. Thank you.
These are our contact details. If you need them, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them either now or by email.
Great,
Of course,
thank you. Thank you both, Anne and Joel.
Okay, I can stop my share and then hand it over to Michelle. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, can everyone see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you again for giving me this opportunity to give a quick introduction today. So I'm Michelle Thompson. I'm the Director of Conservation Biology at the San Diego Natural History Museum, or the NAT. And I'll just give a quick introduction to some of the research efforts that we have going on in San Diego that relate to the task force goals. So I know many of you on the call are probably very familiar with the museum, but some of you maybe not as much. So I wanted to start off a little bit with our mission, and that's to interpret the natural world through research, education, and exhibits to promote understanding of the evolution and diversity of Southern California and the peninsula of Baja California, and to inspire in all a respect for nature and the environment. So while the traditional components of what many people think of a museum, collections and exhibits and education are also very fundamental at the NET, we also do a ton of research we also do a ton of work in research and conservation. And so the Biodiversity Research Center of the Californias is the department that kind of hosts all of our biologists and conservation biologists. And so while I'm the person giving this presentation today, there are of course many people working at the museum on many different projects in birds and mammals, bioservices, herpetology, conservation biology, botany, entomology, paleontology, and the research library. And so the two boxes I've highlighted here are myself. And again, I'm fairly new. I started 3 months ago as the Director of Conservation Biology, and my taxonomic specialty is herpetology, but for about the past 5 years, I've been working more on multidisciplinary projects, so multi-taxa projects, and also projects combining biology and social sciences to inform policy and conservation action. And so Kevin Clark is the other person highlighted here. He's the secondary for as far as representation for the museum on the task force. And he's the Director of Bioservices, and he has many, many years, decades of experience working in San Diego County. So I'm just going to highlight some projects very broadly. What I've learned in the past 3 months here is that all of these people are doing many, many different projects. So I'll just highlight a few today. So here is an example of sort of some of our multi-taxa studies, and these are biodiversity studies of CDFW protected areas. And so some examples here you can see scattered throughout the county are the Batiquitos Lagoon, where we're looking at raptors, the wandering skipper, and mammals. Also in Bowdoin Canyon, looking at small mammals and carnivore camera trapping. In Hollenbeck Canyon, looking at herps, amphibians and reptiles, birds, rare plants, and also doing vegetation mapping. And also in Oak Grove, looking at mammals, birds, and rare plants. So you can see that there's sort of a variety of things going on here, and also scattered around the county. These are multi-year studies. Some of our species specific studies are the Leisfels vireo is an example. So used to be common, but like many species, there's been a lot of loss of their habitats, which are riparian habitats, and also a reduction in populations because of parasitism by the brown-headed cowbird. So the NAT has been working on looking at population monitoring of this species, and also looking at what is the effect of cowbird parasitism and what is the effect of different vegetation types and habitat restoration on nest success and productivity. Let's see. Another species that we've been focusing on is the California gnatcatcher, and also looking at multi-year studies at different sites for this species, mainly focusing on foraging and nesting habitat relationships related to food resources. So this project, the reintroduction of the California red-legged frog, has been a large collaboration with many different organizations, including many on this task force and many people on this task force. So of course, this frog was historically distributed in San Diego County, but again, stressors such as habitat loss, drought, and invasive species extirpated it in San Diego. And so the aim of this project is to bring the frog back to San Diego by translocating eggs from nearby populations in Baja California. So this project spans counties, it also spans countries, and it focuses on habitat restoration, of course, translocation, so moving the species to bring it back to the county, monitoring, looking at reproductive biology of the species as well. So hopefully with continued efforts, the species will expand to more localities. So we don't really know what the future holds for the California red-legged frog, but hopefully we see more of it. And lastly, I wanted to talk about a long-term project about 10 plus years on the floristics of Camp Pendleton. So this has been a pretty productive study. So there's been an over 80% increase in the known flora since 2007 on Camp Pendleton. So I'm sure that means there's still a lot more to know. And Camp Pendleton is also, some of the results of the study has shown it's extremely diverse and an important site. So contains over 40% of the San Diego County's total flora. And there's been many rediscoveries of plants that were previously documented, but hadn't been seen since before the 50s, and also some potentially new species that are undescribed. So this has been a very large project for botanists here at the museum. So with that, I just wanted to thank you and give you, I hope, this overview gives you a little bit of an idea of everything that we've been working on here. Thank you.
Oh, very nice. Thank you, Michelle. Well, that was great. Kim, do we have any public comment on this item?
I don't see any hands raised.
All right, thank you. Do we have any member comment? I see Hans Sin with a hand up. No? No. Okay, my mistake.
I don't see anyone's hand up.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Next up is item 4, annual status report of the environmental mitigation report. Kim Smith will present key achievements made under the EMP this past year. Kim?
Okay, let me share my screen. Can you guys see that?
Not yet, Kim.
Not yet. Okay.
There we
What
go.
about now?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So thank you, Chair Lyons. I'm excited today to present or highlight the work that's been done under the EMP for 2022. And so normally we present a very beautiful brochure that has a bunch of pictures, but this year we decided to work with our editorial staff, and we worked with them to come up with it's called an interactive PDF. It's pretty cool. That's something that can be updated annually, and it has a nice link. It's on our new website, so you can go back and kind of click through all these tabs. You can click through the top up here, or you can go down to these pictures down here. So just really quickly, for those of you that are new to our task force or some of our public members, I just wanted to give a quick reminder on what the Transnet Environmental or EMP program is. This program provides funding to mitigate habitat impacts from our regional and local transportation projects, and also funding for regional land management and biological monitoring. And it has done this by acquiring and managing large tracts of lands with native habitats early in advance of those transportation projects that need mitigation. And this has allowed our program to help reduce cost, to accelerate the delivery of those transportation infrastructure projects, to implement our habitat conservation plans, and then to reduce the listing of species as endangered and threatened. So to date, what has the EMP program done to date? So we've preserved a total of 9,215 acres of land with our conservation partners. That is 164 million in open space investments, with 33.2 million leveraged from our conservation partners. We've secured mitigation for over 3/4 of our Transnet early action projects. We've awarded 117 land management grants, totaling 16.6 million to local organizations and jurisdictions. In addition, we completed 17 land acquisition grants totaling 20 million and contributed 46.5 million to regional management and monitoring since the inception of the EMP. And this is a pretty cool graphic over here on kind of what does 9,125 acres look like. So moving on to our vision. So this last year, SANDAG worked with our task force members and other regional partners to identify a future vision for habitat conservation within the region, building on our efforts, our past efforts implemented through the MSCP and the EMP. And our vision is really simple: to protect, connect, and respect. And I won't read those, but the great news was that in our 2021 regional plan, we were able to identify 3 billion in funding to implement our habitat conservation vision. And this is what we will be working on, or have been working on this past year, continuing in 2023 to work on a habitat conservation needs assessment, so we can figure out how much we, or of the 3 billion, how much we need for acquisition and management and monitoring moving forward. So you're going to hear from us a little bit later on the agenda on that. And then moving over to habitat conservation, and this is, we're highlighting projects that were mitigation for our regional and local transportation projects throughout the county. And these are projects that we worked on this past year. The first one being San Elijo Lagoon. And I know in the past, we've had folks come in and present on the lagoon restoration efforts. Well, restoration for this lagoon is part of the larger I-5 North Coast Corridor project. Our construction was completed just in April of this past year. And what this restoration project did was help increase tidal connectivity across the lagoon. So we're hoping that will increase the biodiversity and improve our water quality. And just from the pictures above, you can see that they've found species such as octopus, they've found scallops and needlefish in the lagoon. Sea lions have moved underneath the I-5 highway here to the eastern part of the lagoon. And so really our efforts now are to continue the long-term biological monitoring for another 10 years. And then San Dieguito Lagoon, this is another large lagoon restoration project. It started in January of this year, and it's also mitigation for the I-5 North Coast Corridor program. We're restoring 84 acres of coastal wetlands just to the east of I-5 near kind of the Del Mar racetrack area. And this is in partnership with Caltrans, who's actually managing the construction contract. We're turning over the lands to the San Dieguito JPA in perpetuity with an endowment. And we're also partnering with the city of San Diego for mitigation for one of their local streets and roads projects. And then trying to be consistent with Southern California Edison's efforts out there. In 2012, they finished up a large restoration project. So we're working with them to make sure that our project doesn't affect theirs negatively. Moving on to North County, the Rancho Lilac property. This is a 902-acre property that was acquired in 2014 by Caltrans for our Transnet net benefit requirement. Just this year, we released an RFP for the preparation of a resource management plan and the eventual ownership and management of the property. And we're currently in negotiations with an entity, and we hope to award that in early 2023. And then finally, I wanted to highlight one of our vernal pool mitigation properties down in South County. And this was mitigation for several regional and local transportation projects, including our large mid-coast project and Poinsettia Station Improvement Project. We're in year 3, going on year 4 of restoration, and we do have the federally endangered San Diego fairy shrimp and the San Diego mesa mint occupying the site. So moving on to scientific research. So this is a big part of the EMP program, to provide research to better inform land managers about best management and monitoring practices for our rare species and their habitats across the region. And this is a large part of the work that our regional entity, the San Diego Management Monitoring Program, facilitates and conducts. And so I just want to highlight some of the continuing efforts this past year. I'll play this cool video, but we continue to work with UC Davis to look at those barriers for wildlife movement. And we're just wrapping up our hazing deterrent study to find out what we could use that would deter mountain lions from, going into someone's ranch and crossing those barriers. So we do not have to delve into the whole depredation problem. And then we are partnering with UC Berkeley, and I believe we did have a presentation earlier this year from Berkeley on their efforts to study the effectiveness of grazingness as a management tool to decrease invasive species, fire risk, and provide suitable habitat. We continue to work on management plans for 7 rare plant species. And we even won an award this past year in 2021 from the Association of Environmental Professionals for Outstanding Technical Report. And then finally, we continue our restoration efforts for the southwestern pond turtle. Just this past spring, there were 20 baby turtles spotted at the Sequan Ecological Preserve. So we're pretty excited about that. So on to environmental stewardship, and I'm going to turn this brief part of the presentation over to Courtney Pesce to highlight what we've accomplished under the EMP Land Management Grant Program. And I just want to say Courtney was instrumental this past year in getting this call for projects released and approved. So Courtney.
Thanks, Kim. So as you all look to these wonderful collage of photos, I just want to mention that we have a very successful land management grant program that assists land managers with the protection of threatened, rare, and endangered species and their habitats. This year, the 10th cycle of the land management grants call for projects was released in January, totaling $2.4 million. Funding approvals were received from SANDAG's Board of Directors this past October, and we are currently working on executing those contracts for our awarded land managers for their notices to proceed on their projects. And then back to you, Kim.
Okay, and then finally, regional coordination. So SANDAG and SDMP collaborated this past year with all of you guys and other stakeholders to develop metrics to measure the overall health of our preserve system. I think every meeting we come to you with a little bit of an update and a teaser on our final report and our metrics dashboard. Well, today is the day that you all get to see the final report and the metrics dashboard. So that is the last item on our agenda today. And before I turn it over, I just want to thank everybody who's given information, who's attended these meetings and given input for this great state of the preserve report, and also to SDMP. They've worked really hard this year. And I think from what you maybe had seen at the MSCP annual meeting on Friday, the dashboard, it looks phenomenal. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chair Lyons.
All right, thank you very much, Kim. Very good job. I appreciate it. Do we have any public comments on this item?
Let me stop sharing here. Let me.
We do. Dan Silver, I have just allowed you to speak.
Thank you.
Now it says you're muted.
Sorry, it was an error, hand raise. Apologies.
No problem. Okay, we're all working out our technology. Thank you. Hearing that there's no others, we'll ask if there are any member comments.
For some reason, I can't see.
Yeah, I can't either. If, at this point, maybe speak up if you're a panelist who has a comment.
Wait, hold on. Now I can see.
Thank you. Yeah, I can too. And I do not see any hands raised.
Nope.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 5, Regional Conservation Habitat Assessment Update.
So I think Lauren, you need to share our PowerPoint real quick.
Okay. As you know, over the past year, Sandex staff has been working on updating the costs for regional habitat acquisition, management, and monitoring. Today, staff is going to give the group an update on the status and the next steps of that effort, and both Keith and Kim will be tag teaming to present this.
Lauren, can you advance the slide? All right, hello, friends. It's virtually good to see you all. I can't wait till we are in person. I have encouraged Kim as in March to go ahead and have an offsite meeting. As a task force, you have much more flexibility to go offsite, maybe go see the San Diego Lagoon restoration that's occurring right now. You know, look and see what's happening in the region, commission trails possibly for land management in our county park. Anyways, that's going to be a March meeting, and I hope you all can attend that. For the new members, and welcome new members, my name is Keith Greer. I'm the manager in Sandag's Environmental Planning Department. And I'm in charge of all the kind of natural things environmental. So whether it's shoreline, or in this case, habitat, or air quality, that's kind of falls under my purview right here. So today with Kim and help here, we're going to talk to you about the regional needs assessment. And we're going to talk about what we need to do for a regional funding source and how we propose to get there. So before we jump into today's actions, I want to kind of step back though and talk about where we've been, where we are now, and then a timeline to get us to the next steps. And we'll talk about this timeline here at the very end here. So where have we been? So today was a great opportunity for Kim to talk about the status of the Transnet funding. And I want to kind of have everybody remember where we've been in this full program. So 25 years ago, over 25 years ago now, the first HCPs or habitat conservation plans in San Diego were approved. So since that time, just with our collective efforts, we've acquired over 52,000 acres at a cost of $1 billion in today's dollars. That's amazing. That's has led to the establishment of the San Diego National Wildlife Refuge, the expansion of the Fish and Wildlife Ecological Reserves, and the establishment of our own San Diego Management Monitoring Program. So you're going to hear about the metrics dashboard, which, by the way, we need a cooler name for that. I'm really excited about it, and I think you will be too after the presentation today. We also have a strategic plan for management and monitoring for the region. This has also allowed us to leverage Transnet funding. So based upon our Transnet EMP program, as you saw, we were to leverage 9,200 acres of property, allowing us to do things like the restoration of San Diego and San Leo lagoons. You know, I thought seeing the seals, first time they've seen seals and octopus in that restored San Alejo lagoon, that gives me a lot of hope for the future. And finally, you know, we 139 land management grants totaling $18 million. You know, as far as we can tell, this is the only grant program for land management that exists. So it's wonderful to have that kind of funding. All that said, you know, we have provided or had included a habitat conservation vision into the Sandag's regional plan, which is kind of like the general plan for the region, you know, how the region will grow in the future. And what that did is it put a $3 billion investment price tag for what we need for habitat conservation. So it elevates habitat conservation, that's the land management, the acquisition, the monitoring, to the same level as all the other infrastructure in the region. So it's not having to compete, it's not having to be a second thought to roads or land use. It's that habitat conservation is important for the sustainability of the region, and it's included in the price tag for what we're going to need. So that said, there's some unfinished business. Probably the largest remaining item left for us to do is to find a dedicated funding source to complete the HCPs. So all these habitat conservation plans, all of them are written with the idea that there would be a regional funding source that would allow jurisdictions to be lifted from the burden of trying to implement these on a case-by-case or a one-by-one approach, and look at it what it really is, which is regional infrastructure. So a regional investment for regional infrastructure. So my experiences with the jurisdictions, especially the small ones, is that these burdens for management cost these burdens for the potential monitoring cost are a lot. And it's one of the reasons they're not approving their sub-area plans is because that financial burden for a small jurisdiction. So the sooner we figure out how much is needed and where we're going to get it from, the better it'll bring our jurisdiction to kind of complete the vision that we've had done 30 years ago. So that's where we've been. Where we are now, we need to figure out the cost of that $3 billion. What does that look like? If we go talk to elected officials in the region and we say we need $3 billion, they're going to ask for what? In the past, we've talked about acquisitions being a component. How much cost is needed for completing the preserve system and buying land? Also management. We know you just can't acquire land. You need to manage that land in order to keep the same level of habitat value in it. So what's the management costs and how would you determine that? And finally, the monitoring costs. We have the SDMMP folks. We've been working in this region now for the last 15 years. What is the needed for the future for monitoring? So today we're going to talk about where we're going to head for defining these costs for both acquisition, and I'll do that component, and for management and monitoring. And Kim, I'll turn it over to her. So as this chart says, or the line graph here shows, by September, we want to have a final report and all the supporting material that we can start socializing with the regional's elected officials and stakeholders. And in that report, we envision that there will be a component for how much is needed for acquisition, how much of it for management, how much is it for monitoring, any other things we need to include in there, such as, risk or components of, having a buffer for in case something happens. Last couple of meetings for the Habitat Task Force, I've been talking about how we're going to approach the acquisition component of it. So today we know that we have acquired all of the acquisitions under the NCCPs. That's that 52,000 acre number, where they occurred, how much they paid for it. And we have a nice spreadsheet and a nice database for that. We also, as mentioned in the last task force meeting, have created a GIS database to show us where those lands occur in the region and which critical connections are still necessary for acquisition of property. For the MSCP South and for the multiple habitat conservation, that's the North County program for the cities, we've provided that a GIS tool for you all to look at that and provide comments. And thank you. Many of you have provided comments on locations that we needed to consider for additions to those areas. And we're having those, going over those right now. We are continuing gathering any kind of input. So we're hoping to get final input by January 1st. And I'm going to ask Kim to send the tools link out to anybody again, in case you want to have one more look at it and give one more set of comments. So where we're headed with that is for the MSCP South and MHCP, it's North County cities, we're going to have a final acquisition number and location for that. And about middle of February, we'll have information on that. We're also working with the County of San Diego. So the two other plans that we have in the region, the Multiple Species Conservation North and the Multiple Species Conservation East, those haven't been approved yet by the county, but we're working with them to come up with an acquisition number for each of those programs. What we're going to be doing is by the end of February, have a number for all the programs. So all 4 programs, whether it's MSCP North, South, or East, and whether it's the Multiple Habitat Conservation Program, will have numbers. We're then going to come up with a price of what we estimate in today's dollars, what that price would be, and have a cost estimate for discussion with you, both locations and the overall cost with you at your March meeting. And so where we're headed with all this is we're going to bring there's a component for acquisition into the final report that we hope will be either used by SANDAG's board, or alternatively, if somebody else is seeking regional funding, by them to kind of put a nail on how much acquisition costs and where that acquisition could go to, which programs. Similarly, we'll have a cost for management and monitoring. And I'm going to turn that over to Kim right now to talk about how we're going to approach that. Kim?
Okay, thanks, Keith. So Lauren, you want to? So in the past, I believe we did reach out to those of you with an email asking for some of your management and monitoring cost data. And this is kind of a little bit, it seems like to me, the acquisitions is a little bit more straightforward. And this is a little bit, or there's just all different types of data. So I wanted to be a little bit farther along with this. I was hoping to get to you by this task force and present some of our data, but we really haven't received much. So our thoughts are in early January, we're going to be reaching back out again to the jurisdictions, to nonprofits, the Refuge CDFW, to try to get that information. And again, it could be your overall budget for open space management. It could be like the city of Carlsbad set all their property analysis records, and we combed through that data. And then we also had folks like City of Chula Vista. They sent us, you know, they had their own spreadsheet with their own costs. So my thought is we'll be reaching out to you guys in early January. I mean, we understand that all of your preserves are different, but in order for us to develop this overall cost for the region, we need a pretty big sample size. So if it's easier for us to come and meet with you individually and comb through your data and give us what you got, I mean, we can do that too. We're happy to, Lauren and Courtney and I are happy to come to you, whatever makes it easier on you guys. And we'll be back in March. My goal is to have the meeting in March be kind of an open forum to come back with all this data and discuss. And so my thoughts to you before I turn it over to Keith would be, you know, once we open it up for member or public comment after this, we discuss this item. If you have any other suggestions, I'm happy to hear those. So back to you, Keith.
So I guess the call for you all is for this month, to look at that final acquisition location, use that GIS tool that we provided, make your final comments to us, and to get to Kim information on land management. That's the request, so that in your March meeting, which we can do in person, we'll have an ample amount of information to provide to you and a draft recommendation for both acquisition and for management and monitoring. Why is this so critical? So if you work on this, in 2024, there's an expectation there will be a bond measure, whether that's a SANDAG driven bond measure or a citizens initiative is undecided, unknown at this point in time. But we need to have about a year to get ourselves ready, and then to start saying, when we're asked how much is needed for habitat, we'll have a number, we'll have the supporting material, and we'll have all the information for the stakeholders to speak from the same page. So that's where we're headed. That's why it's important. And Chair Lyons, I'm turning it back over to you for any questions we may have.
Awesome. Very good. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you. Kim, first, do we have any public comment on this item?
I do not see any hands raised at this time.
And I wonder if you could maybe stop the screen sharing.
Lauren, can you unshare? There we go.
And we could ask if we have member comments. There may be some questions on this item. Do we have some member comments on the presentation today?
Any hands up? I don't see.
So I'll call people. Jim, does it make sense to you? Jim Whalen? So we're headed?
And I just wanted to also say that, you know, our draft report, we plan on presenting that to the task force. There'll be time for you guys to also, once we go over it with you and we have it in report format, to comment on our draft report. So there's definitely be more opportunities in the future.
So this is one of the best run SANDAG programs.
Thank you.
It's been, goddamn, we've been working on it how many years? Like 163 years. And, you know, you have something to show for it. So.
That's good to get that feedback.
Oh, I give a lot more than that usually. So this is
Well, I appreciate the comments. And yes, congratulations on good work. Being a new person to this group, I do have a question, two questions actually, and not seeing other questions from the group. Kim, when you were talking about the management and monitoring costs information that you'd like from us or from entities, any entities, are you reaching out to some nonprofits also that perhaps aren't on this group, and you're reaching out to them already?
Correct. I mean, we have in the past. I think we just need to follow up. So yes.
I think I can think of some here in our jurisdiction in Encinitas that would probably have some good information. As a city here in Encinitas, I'm not sure we have some good information because we haven't done a lot of management I'm not sure we've done any monitoring. One of the things we're trying to do is get better at this and increase our bandwidth to connect with groups like this, so that, like Keith said, we're that very small entity that really has the will but not the funding or the bandwidth to do much. So hopefully we can be one of those partners that you're looking for, that can add a lot of I don't know, good ideas and interest, even though we don't have a lot of history or bandwidth.
So I mean, Chair Lyons, that's a great example. So Encinitas may not have a lot of data, but there's a lot of nonprofits that work in your region. So the Nature Collective, Kim and Courtney are reaching out to Nature Collective to get information on their management. The Center for Natural Lands Management is another land holder in that region that actually does land management. So the more we can fill in these gaps of determining land management, the more we'll have a solid number. So when people ask us about it, we'll have supporting information and say, this is what the number is, and this is the reason why.
Very good. Thank you. Keith, I did have one other question for the acquisition information you presented. When people go into the GIS link that Kim will resend to us, if they haven't already identified where there might be some missing locations for acquisition, are you asking us to identify these based on certain criteria? Certainly it would be habitat, but could you just, for my benefit, touch on that criteria?
Sure, and as kind of a reminder, we presented a GIS tool, an exercise that we did at Sandag, where we said, where's the preserve boundaries as they've been adopted or approved or envisioned? Where have the lands been conserved in that preserve boundary? So of this kind of concept of needs to be protected, what's been protected already, and what remains. And so I daylighted that to you, I think it was back in May, to presentation. And at that time, the Fish and Wildlife Service provided some information, and we kind of really had a nice alignment of what we thought was needed to be acquired. Since that time, we provided a tool, and people went in the tool and they said, yeah, you got this area, but you forgot about this other area. So we were able to now have a refined ideas about what should be acquired and where. And we're hoping to get a little bit more information from now until the end of this calendar year, and then come back in March, and I'll present all this to you. Where is the preserve boundaries, what has been acquired so far, what needs to be acquired, and some additional areas to make sure that the preserves are functioning adequately. And that's what I'll present in March to you, along with a price tag for that acquisition cost.
Very good. I think that's a call. That's a last call for people to identify those areas. Maybe take a few hours out of the holiday season to help this task force and help Keith and Kim identify those areas. That's going to be very important to the success of our work. Any other questions or comments at this time? Well, thank you very much. We'll go to our long-awaited item, our metrics dashboard. It's item number 6 here today to debut the Preserve Metrics Dashboard is Dr. Chris Preston and Emily Perkins from SDMMP. I think you'll be tag teaming. Maybe Chris will be launching it up.
Yes. Hi, can you see the presentation in presentation mode?
Yes.
But that was one hurdle to get over. Today, I'm going to just give a brief introduction to our State of Preserve report and metrics dashboard, and then I'll turn it over to Emily to really walk you through it. And this is a very exciting day for the San Diego Management Monitoring Program and our many partners. I would like to thank the authors on this report, which includes the SDMMP team of Emily, Chris, Annabelle, Sarah. And then also Emily Luciani and Susan Wynn contributed to the report as authors of one of the sections. And also just Susan looked it over. And then Barbara Coos also contributed greatly to the report. And so I'm going to spend a little bit of time giving you some background of why we did this report. It started way back in 2016 with Keith Greer and Kyle Rice. And then I will take you through just the sections of the report briefly, but most of the time is going to be spent with Emily looking at this online. Okay, so This is the MSP portal. This is a management strategic plan portal. This is where you can go to get the management strategic plan and look at the goals and objectives that we have every 5 years. Those are updated. We're in the process of updating for 2022 to 2026. And in a moment, I'll explain the relationship of this document to the EMP. This is an example of if you were to go to our portal, you could go and get objectives for a species such as the cactus wren. It gives the long-term goal, the objectives, and then the actions that would be happening during this 5-year cycle. And then this brings us to, after we completed this plan, the ITOC, Independent Tax Oversight Committee for Sandag, prepared a report. And in that report, there was a recommendation that is the basis for what we're doing today. And that recommendation was to measure progress in meeting specific and detailed EMP goals, objectives, so those are the objectives of our plan, and action items for regional monitoring and management under the management strategic plan. And specifically to develop metrics using the abundance of data to holistically understand the status and baselines established in regional conservation plans that Keith was just referring to. There's the South County MSCP or Multiple Species Conservation Plan. And then for the Northwest cities, there's a Multiple Habitat Conservation Plan. And then the North County and the East County plans are under development. And finally, to formalize a system to communicate complex performance results to the public. And that's what our metrics dashboard that Emily's going to walk you through does. This is just the history. Many of you have been here for the long haul. Started in July 2016 when Keith and Kyle went through different examples of how people have looked at ecosystem health. And then in September 2017, there was an EMP working group meeting where SDMMP presented fact sheets, and that got a lot of conversation on where we needed to go next with the State of the Preserve report. And then in May 2018, there was a Preserve Metrics meeting with many partners to get ideas for what we would want to do for the indicators and metrics. Indicators are an example of something that we are looking at to describe how the preserve system is doing. So a species or a vegetation community, and metrics are what we are measuring for the indicators to look at their status. In 2019, we reviewed the metrics category and had a preserve metrics workshop where all the EMP and many other partners came and gave us feedback, had a workshop where they presented ideas. And then in June 2020, SDMMP provided our metrics framework based on the 1TAM model. And we did a mock-up of the report in September. And then in January 2021, we did an update. And then in May 2021, we held a number of meetings with EMP working group members and land managers to go over what we had done so far. Oops, sorry. And then this report has had lots of review, more than any document I've ever worked on. First draft was in May 2021, and that was for internal EMP review. Then we did a lot of revisions, and we had another draft in July 30th, 2021, which was where we got USGS partners to reviewers, official reviewers, and then we had many content reviewers. We had something like 9 reviewers, and I would like to say thank you to Jonathan Snyder from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and Kai Palanskar from San Bernardino Water Conservation Plan for the work that they did. They did the whole document in great review, as did several other people. Then in 2022, it took about a year to get a lot of more internal and very comprehensive revisions. We had a couple rounds. Then in October 2022, we sent it to AECOM, and Yvonne Moore, who was a former administrator for our program, she reviewed it for consistency, a whole lot more edits. And then finally we got it to technical editing and formatting. So needless to say, this document has improved with all of this review. And finally, we got approval from, they actually read it, the Bureau approving official read the whole entire document had like 3 minor edits, actually caused some really small grammatical errors, and approved it. So this is a wonderful day. It feels like a time to celebrate. Now, just how this report, the metrics go with our MSP roadmap or our strategic plan. I just wanted to lay this out here. Most of you have seen this. So we have a management strategic plan at the bottom in that tan circle. That is updated every 5 years. And as I was saying, we're in the process of updating the objectives for 2022 and 2026. That drives what we do for monitoring and management. And you can see we have categories that we monitor. We do species, vegetation, communities, threats, and then also abiotic components like soils and temperature and climate and so on. We took that monitoring information to make to identify the indicators that we could have information for metrics. And so these metrics will be updated regularly because they're part of our monitoring program. And that's the report that went out to the ITOC, the board of directors and stakeholders today. It's also going to land managers, and they will provide feedback, and that will help us to, we already have gotten feedback from this report into what we're doing in the next update of the MSP. And just to also finish tying the loop together, our management strategic plan guides the EMP 2-year work plan, or now I should say the Regional Habitat Conservation Task Force work plan. That's done every 2 years based on the objectives of the management strategic plan. And then every year there's an annual funding approval funding has to be approved by the board of directors based on this plan. So if you were to go to the SANDAG webpage, their new webpage, this is for the regional management and monitoring. You could download the State of the Preserve report, and you could download the audit and other documents. This is what the report looks like. The main body, the first section was prepared by U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and it talks about preserve assembly and species conservation for the MSCP and the MHCP. This takes the place of their triennial report that the wildlife agencies prepare. And then the USGS has the following sections on indicators. And then an appendix, and this is where you get all the gory details. If you want to know why we chose that indicator and what the metrics are based on, that's where you would go. And this shows the indicators. The first report had 19 indicators. The indicator describes the state of something, in this case, the state of the preserve. And then metrics are used to measure how that indicator status is doing. So for instance, we might look at how much conservation has happened for coastal sage grub over time. That might be a metric. And the species and or the indicators in white are the ones that are in this first preserve report. So we have species indicator, vegetation community indicator, system and landscape processes. Those landscape scale processes can also become threats, such as fire is a natural part of our system, but because of human activities, particularly in ignitions, we have changed that fire regime and altered it in ways that are not beneficial for all of our resources. And then we have a current status, condition status for each indicator that talks about how that indicator is doing overall and the metrics, the condition. So the condition is describing that current state. Concern, caution, significant concern, and good are the categories. And we have trends. If we have enough data, we can see if the condition is improving or declining, or it might be fluctuating, but no trend, or unknown. And finally, we have a confidence is how much faith do we have in our data sets? How complete are they? How spatially representative? And we can categorize those as high, medium, low, or unknown. And this is where you can go to our metrics dashboard, download the report, view indicators and metrics with additional information. And believe me, there's a lot of information you can get there. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Emily to share the actual preserve dashboard. Thank you, or the metrics dashboard.
I think I can't share until you stop sharing.
I'm trying to see where I can stop. Oh, sorry. This is on the other screen. There we go.
Okay. Share. Okay, is that working? Can you hear me? Do I sound weird?
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, good. Okay, thanks so much, Chris. I'm going to show the new SDMMP website. Our whole website has gotten a little bit of a facelift, although the content is generally the same except for our new State of the Preserve pages. This is our new homepage here. And you can scroll down, we have announcements, some highlighted content, and some events. Oh, I forgot before I start, I don't have a slide, so I didn't get to put everyone's names. But I also wanted to mention, in addition to all the people that Chris mentioned, that our website programmer is Dan Nguyen, who's here on this and is the person who actually programmed all of this and spent many, many hours working on this with me. So he is absolutely due credit for all of this as well. So we've updated our homepage a little bit here. I'm going to go through some of the pages that already existed just to show how they look now. There's just some minor changes to the formatting. And then I'm going to go through the State of the Preserve and our new dashboard. So up here for our MSP portal, I'm going to start on projects. We have our list of projects. And I want to remind everyone that if you just apply for a login to our site, you are capable of adding projects to this page as well. So feel free to add projects to this page wherever you see fit. The project pages, when you go to a page, this is the Coastal Cactus Conservation Network. You get some overview information about the type of project and who's working on it. Lots of partners in many cases. You see new tabs across the top that used to just be all scroll, and now instead you can click on these tabs. Another change is the files and documents. You can see this project I picked because it has 20 pages of documents. And that's a lot to sort through if you're looking for a specific report. So there is a search up here that you can just start typing. And if you know the author, it will limit the list to just what you've searched for. You can also put in a year and it will limit it to certain years as well. And you can also sort by all of these fields. So if you're looking for something in particular, that is sort of one update that we've done with our projects. Another one is looking at the data for the project. If there's an online map available, it shows up here just on the page instead of having to go to another link. And you can also download any of the data that's available here. I'm not going to download this one, it's big, but if there's anything, this is a zipped raster file that you can download as well. Some projects have different tabs. So really quickly, I'm going to show the Rare Plant Inspect and Manage page as well to show that when it's available, there's also MSP information. And so Chris had shown this page, and you can link objectives to projects. So if there's an objective to complete some action and there's a project that is working towards that objective, you can actually add that link together, and so you can find them in both directions. So on the project page, you can look up all of the MSP information, and you can also add a new project if there's one that's missing. All right. We also have under this pages for species, vegetation, communities, and threats. The species page just looks a little bit different, but has all the same species on it. Again, you can start searching, just typing, or you can search by category or taxa. When you click on a page, you get to pick this one because I know it has a pretty picture. Some basic information about the species. Again, you can get the same MSP information. This is now specific to a species instead of an individual project. Where there is metric information available, there's a tab. Not all species have metric information, so that tab just won't be there. With a link to the full dashboard here. You can look at projects. So if you're looking at a particular species and you just want to see all the projects that have been done or are in progress, you can come just to this tab. Again, there is a search, so you can find all the genetic projects just by typing it in there. This gets a little repetitive, so I won't go through all of it, but the files and documents are the same, and there's a species profile. The same is true for all of the vegetation communities and all of the threats. So take a look through all of those. If there seems to be something missing that we should add, reports or projects, let us know, or feel free to start adding stuff yourself. I'm gonna close some because I can't see this little thing. This is the same as it used to be. It just looks different. The track progress page, this has all been updated as well as the library. You can see, you can search for Chaparral and come up with this list. So these aren't new functions. They just look a little bit different. They're all in the same place. So let me go to the dashboard. So that's the more interesting part. From the home page, you can get to our metrics information either here or in the drop down, you can jump to directly what you want to go to. When you go to the state of the preserve, you come to this page. This is kind of our intro page to the report and all of the information. It starts out with some sort of frequently asked questions. You know, what is this? Just in a paragraph, what are the indicators? How are they chosen? And some definitions for the terms that you see throughout. So this gives some really high level information up front, as well as a diagram with all of our 19 indicators symbolized by their condition, either good, caution, concern, or significant concern. Then there's 3 options down the side that you can get more information. It's designed to start high level and then allow you to dig down deeper to get more and more information. I'm going to start at the bottom, but you can download the report. It's on Sandag's website and it's also available here on our website. So you can download the actual PDF. And again, the appendix is really where you will find the most detail available. It has all of the methods and all of the citations. So if there's anything in particular, you can always download the full report. Then we have an indicator chart. So this is going to give you a little bit more information than that first graphic because it's going to have the condition, trend, and confidence. This is for all of the 19 indicators that we have. And you can also sort it. If you only care about vegetation communities, you can limit this list and search again like the other ones. I think the main thing that we sort of expect most people to go straight to is our dashboard. And so the dashboard is here. Again, you can download the report. If you start going through it and you realize, wait, why does this look like this? You can always come back to and download the full appendix. This gives some overview of the condition of our indicators here and some information about the preserve system sections. I do want to say we counted up at least 45 people who have provided information and input, direct input on this report, which is a lot of you guys. And we compiled data from over 60 projects. So I do think that the amount of data that we have behind this is really what makes it so unique and so powerful that we have this region that's collecting all this data together and we can put it together into a unified database to pull up these types of insights. So, and that's everybody here. I'm going to go through a couple examples. If anyone has anything in particular you want to look at, I'm happy to go wherever. I'm going to start with mountain lion. So when you click down on the left, here is where all of your indicator choices are. When you click on Mountain Lion, you come to the overview. It gives you the condition, trend, and confidence for the indicator, as well as the condition, trend, and confidence for each individual metric. And just a quick explanation about what that metric actually is. Again, this is only a subset of information. So if this isn't enough, go to the report. Each metric has its own tab across the top. So you can see the first one is genetic diversity, the condition, trend, and confidence. You can see the actual value of the metric is 24.3. If other years of data are available, they'll be on this chart as well. You can also see any detailed information. So in this case, looking at the entire range versus San Diego County, just for the Eastern Peninsula ranges. And then there is a map. So in this case, it's showing you the two genetic clusters, one up here that goes into Orange County. This map is just limited at San Diego. And then another that is for the majority of San Diego here. This map, you can zoom in and out. You can click on the points and get information. You can change the base map and put on imagery and zoom in more. You can, if you click on the info button, you'll get a full list of all the citations that were used in this data. And then some of them have the ability to turn layers on and off if there are multiple layers. So in this case, you just X out the eyeball and it goes away. Okay. On the second one, here's an example of where you can see multiple years of data. This is looking at patches of contiguous habitat. And so you can see multiple, the metric value is 8, and you can see what year is our baseline versus our current year, because that will change by metric. I'll show this example. This graph is not very legible. So you can click here and do view on a full screen and really zoom in. So you can actually read all of this information down here at the bottom. This is interactive, so you can turn things on and off in the legend. You only care about some of them. And then you can exit from there. This one also has multiple layers, so you can see sort of how the patches have changed over time. The dark green are patches that were conserved in 1995, and then the light green are areas that have been added since then. So you can see the growth in the number of contiguous patches, either just expanding on to one that already existed or gathering up enough land to create an entire new patch of contiguous habitat in this case. The last tab on every indicator is additional resources, and this includes projects, objectives, and citations. And this page will definitely evolve over time. One, because we will add new projects and add new objectives, so that will constantly be updated as we go. This is just a subset right now of citations from the report, but that will continue to expand as well. I think it will also expand because there's different reasons to connect a project and objectives. Some of them might be the actual raw data that was used in the metric. Some of them might be a monitoring project that's going to continue to the future that will help us update that metric in the future. But some also might be a management plan that is working to actually improve the condition of this metric or this indicator. And so if anyone has suggestions on any of these pages, this is kind of our first draft that just went live yesterday. So please let us know if you have any additional input. I think this page in particular could definitely continue to grow, and how we use this to show the connections between our objectives and our projects, and then how the metric values change based on our monitoring and our management. Okay. Anyone have any suggestions? Can I even see the chat? No, you have to shout at me.
Hey, Emily, can you walk us through just a quick example of another metric where
Yeah.
it goes the other direction? Like lots of data or little data and doing okay?
Sure, we have lots of those. How about Vireo? You like that one? You know what's a good one? I'm going to show you Pond Turtle. Pond Turtle, because we talked about that earlier, because Kim showed that one. So Pond Turtle, you can see it is in the concern, but when you look at the first metric, this is looking at the presence of adults versus juvenile pond turtles. In the past, and I'm going to turn on the baseline. So the baseline period for this was 2000 to 2005. And you can see that the majority of areas where pond turtles were even found were just a single sex, meaning that they couldn't be reproducing, with just a couple of watersheds that even had both sexes available and still did not have any juveniles. And so through a lot of management from the USGS and Chris Brown, who's part of our group, you can actually come in, we'll turn that baseline off and turn on the current time period. You can now see these hucks, these are sub-watersheds that now have juveniles present. And so they've really expanded in range due to a lot of restoration efforts and reintroduction of those turtles. So I think you do see some improving. While it is low numbers and falling into significant concern, it is improving significantly. There is another graph. So another metric in this one is our invasive aquatic species impact score. This is counting up the number of invasive species, but some invasive aquatics are given a higher impact score based on the amount of sort of damage that's done. So it might not necessarily be that there's more, but that there's highly concerning invasive aquatic species. This one only has a single year of data. So you can see that while they are expanding, and sort of some of these low numbers are in a big effort from removal of invasive aquatics, there still are some priority areas to continue focusing on for pond turtles. Pond turtles, we also have a water availability score. This is based on the stick data. So how much water is actually available. And this is a score based on, I should let Chris Brown explain this one better. This is based on what pond turtles would need. And so it's put into an index. This is based on Robert Fisher's index of biological integrity for streams. And so you can see positive areas as well, but unnatural stream flows can cause additional issues. And then the final one is looking at managed occurrences on conserved lands. So this is focused really on that management aspect and looking at where restoration and enhancement has occurred, as well as new populations were introduced, or just restoration with juveniles present. So there's actually quite a bit of improvement from pond turtles. And you can go back through and look at all the projects that show that and all of our objectives. So anyone else with another suggestion?
Yes, I do. Emily, thank you. My question is there a way to bring in a layer that shows lands that are privately owned versus publicly owned?
Yeah, a lot of maps do have our conserved lands layer on. So conserved lands would be anything that we focus our attention on, generally speaking. But we do have actually that mountain lion layer. Let me go back to this one. This one, while it does show conserved lands, it also just shows all of open space. So it would be, you can turn on conserved lands here and see the dark green underneath where they are conserved within the larger patches. And then anything that's not dark green underneath is privately owned, but still considered open space and undeveloped.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Do we have any other clarifying questions? I see, it looks like Chris Preston's hand is up.
Yes, I did want to say that in the preserve report, we do have a sort of what does this all mean section. And I think that one of the most important things we did through this exercise is identified that there are a lot of large scale threats happening in the last 20 years that weren't even anticipated at the time that these plans were developed. So for an example, we have a number of species that are being impacted by multiple threats and in similar ways. So for example, we have species like Hermes copper butterfly that at first was impacted by habitat loss and fragmentation. That was the first step, and that started in the 60s and continued. And then with our plans, we conserved land for them, and that was awesome. We were doing really well. And then what happened? We had these massive wildfires in 2003 and 2007, and the Hermes copper butterfly is not that adapted to fire in the sense of these large fires, because the eggs are laid on a branch, single egg on a branch. They aren't protected from the fire. And so what happened was these fires went through and wiped out the populations. And because of the fragmentation of the landscape and these large fires, individuals had a really difficult time coming back and repopulating these areas. There are a few examples where there was adjacent habitat, where as the habitat recovered post-fire, some of the Hermes moved in. So the fire did a number on them. And then, and in fact, you can really see it if you look at, we've been looking at areas to survey that haven't been burned. And it's really hard to find in their suitable habitat many areas that did not burn during those 2003 and 2000 and even more recent wildfires. And then the third thing that's affecting them is this long-term 20-year drought. So not only do you have these populations now isolated and they aren't getting recruitment from other areas, now they're becoming smaller because they've had such bad years that they haven't produced many, they haven't had high productivity. And so the populations are just on a downward spiral of decline. Even though the habitat is still good, it's because of these droughts we've been having. And there's a number of species being impacted by drought, the fire, the drought cycle, and we see it across them. So I think this was a real eye opener. We knew about this, but to actually see what's happening on the landscape and for multiple species and the vegetation communities, it really has us where we have to know how to focus our management and what we can do to improve conditions and where we can help to increase resilience of areas that are doing well and keep them in good shape. So we are working on that with, for instance, in our ecological integrity across the landscape that Emily has modeled for coastal sage-grouse, chaparral, and oak woodland and riparian woodland. So there's strategies we can take for the woodlands that was die-off of trees, either to oak woodlands for golden spotted oak borer or riparian to shot-hole borer. And because of the regional management and monitoring program, we've learned a lot about these threats. And we understand now what we can do to mitigate some of these threats. And I think the take-home point is that we are improving in a lot of areas, but management is going to be a huge cost for our preserve system going forward, much more than I think any of us anticipated when these plans were developed.
Thank you for that. At this point, I'll ask if there are any public comments.
I don't see any hands raised.
All right.
But
Susan has a hand.
Yeah, I just saw that Susan put her hand up, and we'll go to her next.
Well, I just want to, amount of work that went into this. I mean, SDMP folks, like if we look back at like we started, when we first started with the EMP working group, and we had a spreadsheet that with a needs assessment, right? It was an Excel spreadsheet. And to think that, we've gone from that to this, like is a pretty amazing accomplishment. And I just wanted to speak up and say, like, I mean, Emily and Chris and all of, I mean, this is just amazing. And, you know, there's not too many examples like this out there. I mean, we searched, for examples when we started this process, and, I just wanted to commend you all for the work that you've done. And I think this also, in going for thinking about regional funding, I mean, we need to keep this going, right? So you've built it up, it's ready to go, and but we only have a couple more years of funding, right? So hopefully being able to like show what is happening, and I think this will really be helpful in showing the public and other elected officials and everybody, like just what Chris was saying, like it puts it all together with a bow, right? Like here's why we've spent the money, and here's what's happening. And I think the fact that we do have some success stories, I think the pond turtle is a great example, where we really have turned things around, because of this work. Maybe that will help us in our quest for regional funding. So I just wanted to say thanks to all the hard work that went into this. It's pretty amazing.
Thank you. What I'd like to comment on is that it seems to me to be extremely deep, which is good, but also to rise everything up to a shallow level too, so that people with different levels of ability and needs for different types of information can access it. And if they need additional detail, they've got it there to drill down into. So it looks like it's going to be a really helpful tool for many, many people, if not everyone who's on this task force. Well, thank you to everyone. I'll just call out one more time. I'm not sure, I don't see any additional hands for questions or comments.
No, I don't see any. Nope.
Okay. With that then, we give ourselves the gift of a little time. Thank you to everyone. And I also want to thank our new members and welcome them again. Appreciate you joining us today. The next Regional Habitat Conservation Task Force meeting will be on Tuesday, March 13th, 2023. And Kim will follow up with more details on that. Thank you all. We'll adjourn, and happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you.